Alright, let's do a couple word problems, because once we start talking about fractions, suddenly people have issues trying to figure out what sort of operations they should use. So, how many sheets of plywood, each 3/4 inch thick, are in a stack that's 18 inches high? So, if you're having trouble kind of visualizing what's going on here, we have an 18 inch high stack here, and we're stacking 3/4 inch plywood. We have a bunch of plywood stacked here, each of them 3/4 inch thick, and we're trying to figure out how many sheets of plywood there are. Alright, that's fairly simple when you phrase it like that, but trying to figure out what sort of operation we should use might be another question. Well, let me phrase it this way, or let me do it this way instead. If our stack was 18 inches high, and each of these were 2 inches thick, how many sheets are there? Well, at this point, you're saying, okay, well, they're 2 inches thick. What number times 2 should give us 18? We should be using division here. 18 divided by 2, which would give us 9. But of course, that's not the problem we're looking at. We're looking at 3/4 inch thick. But the fact that it's 2 inches doesn't really, the actual measurement here doesn't really impact the sort of operations we're going to do. I would take the 18 inches tall divided by 3/4. Just like it took 18 divided by 2 here to figure out how many sheets that are 2 inches thick there should be. If each of them are 3/4 of an inch thick, I should be dividing by 3/4. It's the same sort of thing. And oftentimes on these problems, if you're having trouble figuring out if it should be multiplication, division, whatever, you might try just substituting in a whole number in there, and your intuition might be able to kick in a little better. Alright, so we're taking 18 divided by 3/4. We're dividing by a fraction, which means I'm going to change this into 18 times 4/3. I actually did change this to 18 over 1 as well, just so I can think of it as a fraction as well. But that one's not quite as important as the 3/4 going to 4/3 and changing this to multiplication. Now that it's multiplication, though, I can actually see, well, 18 times 4 over 3. I'm doing this because I'm seeing that there's a common factor of 3 that I can cancel here, giving me a 6 and a 1. And this gives me 24. So if I had 24 boards of 3/4 inch plywood, this stack would be 18 inches high. So that there are 24 sheets of plywood. Alright. For total width of the floor space covered by find the total width of the floor space covered by boards with 3 5/8 inch surface exposed each. So, they say exposed surface each, so I'm guessing this is probably tongue and groove or something like that. Whatever. It's not really that important. We have a bunch of boards, and each of these distances is 3 5/8. And we have 38 boards. And we're trying to figure out what is this distance. Well, again, if you're having trouble figuring out what sort of operation you should use here, if I had 38 boards and each of them was, let's say, 2 inches thick, what would that total distance be? Well, hopefully you might be able to see that this would be 38 times 2. We're just taking that 2 inches 38 times. But, of course, they're not 2 inches, they're 3 5/8. So we're going to take this 38 times 3 5/8. Alright, this is a mixed number, and to deal with mixed numbers, well, we don't deal with mixed numbers, we just convert them. This would be 3 times 8 is 24, add that to 5, we get 29 eighths. And at this point it might be worth going to the calculator. You could reduce this somewhat. You could try to approach it, but I'm just going to go to the calculator. 38 times 29 divided by 8. I'm comfortable with how I typed this into the calculator because it's going to do this multiplication first and then that division. But it actually, as I did on the previous several problems, this is 38 over 1, so this is 38 times 29 over 8. This is essentially how the calculator is going to do it, and that's just fine with me. If I was uncomfortable with it, I could put this in parentheses there to do the 29 eighths first and then multiply by 38. That's not necessary, though, because you can see 38 times 29 divided by 8 those give us the same thing there. All right, so we have 137.75. I think you'll probably be comfortable with me saying that 0.75 is 3/4. If you didn't see it, well, this would be 137 3/4. If you didn't happen to see that, you would want to multiply it back by the 8, because that's the thing that we divided by. You'd go 137, that's our whole part, and then we do 0.75 times 8, which gives us 6/8. We'd reduce our 6/8 to 3/4, but whatever. And this is inches. So we'd have 137 3/4 of an inch. Here we have a 5 3/4 inch wide board is cut into 3/4, is cut to 3/4 of the original width. What is the new width? So we're saying 3/4 of this. Whenever you see this fraction of something, that's a good indicator that we're talking about multiplication. So this will be 3/4 times 5 3/4. I don't want to multiply by a mixed number, so I'm going to change that to a fraction. 5 times 4 is 20. Add that to the 3. This is 23/4. And multiply these together, we get, I can already see there isn't going to be any cancellation because the 4s, the only factors here are 2s, and there are no 2s that are factors on the top, so I'll just kind of multiply these together. We get 69/16, which I'm going to ask the calculator. 69 over 16, that's 4. And then we have the 0.3125. So we're going to take that 4 and the 0.3125 separate. I'll take the 0.3125 times 16, because that's the number I divided by. That gives me 5. So this is 4 5/16. All right.